Hey Kurt, this is Richard Wilson from Mad Shelley Films, and we have a message for you.
This is Mad Shelley Films, and you're listening to Inspirado, Projecto, Radio.
Get ready, folks, for an exciting and enlightening conversation with Nina Rubin from AfterDefeat.com. She is a coactive coach, very tuned in, and if you need help, find her on her website, AfterDefeat.com. She's also on Instagram at AfterDefeat. All right, here we go. So I've been looking through your website here, and it's AfterDefeat.com, and it's cool, this term coactive coaching. I just think it's such an awesome term, like the fact that it's like, to me, it's like the idea that you're co-creating. So you're helping co-create someone's life. Like, you're not just there to go here, go do that, and this is the thing you need to do. But it feels like it's a more integrated system. I don't know if I'm off base or if that.
No, you're exactly on base. You're correct. So I would say, I would call it relational. Mm-hmm. And so coactive is something that we're exactly right. We're co-creating and we're figuring out together.
That's fantastic. I think that's one of the most important things is collaboration, rather than competition. It's about cooperation and collaboration and, co-creating a reality, so to speak. And
yes, and your reality. Like, because if I'm your coach or somebody's coach, some people think, oh, you're going to just tell me what I'm not going to do, because you're not going to follow along. Why would you do what I tell you to do when you know yourself better? So let's instead brainstorm and figure out a way that you can move forward in your life, and I can support you and help you get the best results.
And that's what's so kick-ass. That's what's so interesting, is that you're specializing in this specific kind of arena. Because one of the big things that I that just kind of floats around in my brain that I tend to talk a lot about is the importance of having friends in our lives who are encouraging one another's dreams and bringing out the best versions of them, and knowing, like, okay, this person really likes, I don't know, screenplays or something. I'm going to do what I can to support this person with whatever ideas they need or whatever they need to go in that direction. And so I talk frequently about that idea of, like, that's how the most ideal friendships would be. And the fact that you are choosing to become that person in someone's life where they're going, you know what, I really have these excitements, or I have these excitements, and I just don't know. And it sounds to me that you offer them you kind of help them construct the keys to open up those doors.
Thank you so much. I would agree. Actually, right before our call today, I was talking to a client, and she's really anxious about, she works as a hairstylist, and she's anxious about going back to, she's excited but also anxious to go back to work at her salon. And we started the session by talking about what's been going well for you. And she said, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. And I said, what were you expecting? And she said, I thought you would start with, like, what are you most nervous about? And I said, no, let's talk about what's actually going well and lead from there. Like, let's talk about what's going, rather than, like, let's not drag you down, let's bring you up. And then we'll talk about the other stuff. We will talk about it all.
It's such a brilliant idea, because you're going, look, we're going in this track right now. We're going to build momentum in this direction. And it's so interesting, because I'll interview people when I'm in Ubers, and they'll some of them will kind of look at me strange, like, why do you want to know so much about me? Basically, with the idea that most of their Uber passengers are just kind of sitting there on their cell phones, not really doing too much. And but for someone to actually want to know what their hobbies are, what their passions and talents are outside of driving Uber, to see what those other aspects of themselves are, it's quite fun and enlightening to unpack this box. By the time I get to my destination, so I get the kind of like the wheels turning in their brains, thinking, oh wow, it's been a while since I sat down and painted. What the heck? I think I'll go do that.
Right. Well, sort of like when I came to your show recently, And then I said, but by the way, what kind of music do you like?
Right.
I figure like that, yes, you play in a yacht rock band, which I love, but I imagine that you have other interests, and I imagine that you're a full person and not just donning a captain's uniform all the time. I might be wrong, but I would imagine you're fuller than that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just such a wonderful thing when people are asked about those things that they're excited about, and a lot of times those are things that they haven't revisited in a long time, or a lot of times they, for some reason, they regard it as stuff that they did when they were kids, and that was back when I was a kid, so long ago. It's like this thing that, look, this is a spirit you can resurrect at any time, man. Do you want this spirit to be part of your life, or do you just want to let it reside in some grave in the past?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And maybe you don't want to do that anymore, but to something else. Like I know somebody who recently had surgery, and during her surgery and her recovery, she's lost her interest in photography, but instead she's revisited sewing, and she's bought this new sewing machine, and she's found so much fun and comfort and solace in sewing. But for whatever reason, photography is not her hobby anymore. And she said, I never expected to sew again. It's been like 30 years. And then she said, but I'm loving it. And she's been really enjoying making quilts and blankets and clothes. And I just thought that was phenomenal. Because we don't have to have the exact same hobby or passion or interest or job, but we do need to do something. Do something that's not just work.
Right. And, and I think it's so interesting because, a lot of times I'll hear that phrase come out of people's mouths who are like, oh, yeah, I like to draw just for myself, or I like to write just for myself. And I realize, there's that part of me where it's like, oh, my gosh, you've got this inspired wisdom. Why not share it with the world? And then I realize that there's also that aspect of people where they don't want to be critiqued. They don't want to be judged for this thing that they really love that's so special to them. They don't want someone stomping around in this world that they're creating. So they kind of keep it to themselves. They keep it nice and quiet. And that's just something that I like doing. And it's so important for us I was reading an article actually recently about, it's so interesting you brought that up about hobbies, the importance of having a hobby outside of your work. Because none of us are that job. We're fitting in some sort of, what's the word, social construct or some kind of character that fits in that particular setting for that time being. We're totally not that thing. And it's so much fun when you can, get in the orbit of people and unpack, okay, what are all these other aspects about you? And when you find out about these hobbies where they're like, well, I like to collect stamps. I don't really tell anyone about it, but now that you're asking, I like to do that. And you're going, wow, that's cool. That's really neat.
Well, and the other thing is, when somebody says, I like to write or collect stamps just for myself, we're not asking, I think that's what a hobby is. It's what you do for yourself. It's not necessarily becoming a profession or something that you're trying to make a side hustle. It can literally be for fun, and we don't need to qualify. It's for me. But I think people do sort of bristle when they think that they're going to be critiqued. You're exactly right about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because what goes along with just the lies that we're taught at such young ages, we're taught this idea that there's all this competition out there, and everything is so overly saturated, so you might as well become a lawyer or a doctor instead. Forget about that acting career, forget about that music career. It's so oversaturated out there. You'll have to compete against all these people. So there's this idea of competition planted firmly in our brains at a very early age, that it's us versus them. We got to fight to get our way to the top, rather than, hey, wow, what about simply following your heart in the direction that's exciting to you? And there you go, and you watch how it grows itself. And I just find such enjoyment when I see people experimenting with that, and I experiment with that on my own, and just going, where does this intuition lead me right now? Where's the rainbow? What kind of pot of gold is going to be waiting there at the end of this rainbow that I'm kind of following through this spectrum? It's so much fun, because then you come across all these wonderful surprises. And like, for instance, the people that you've been coaching, let's say, someone comes to you as a goal for, I don't know, running a marathon or something. It must be very exciting for you to sort of co-create that reality with them, and then to see them follow through with that.
It's awesome. But the other aspect is, let's say somebody has this goal of running a marathon. So we would talk about what is the feeling you want to have, because I want them to run the marathon, but we're also talking about the values. what are the values that support running a marathon? What are the values that support finishing the marathon and training for the marathon? Because it's not just the actual day of the marathon, like that 4 hours or 3, 4, 5 hour stretch of time. It's everything else leading up to it. And so what are the things that you're gaining in doing this? Also, what are you losing in doing this? Oh, you're losing some time with friends because you're training. Okay. And what are you gaining? Well, I'm gaining fitness. I'm gaining the ability to set and achieve a goal. So one of your values then is accomplishment. Yes, it is. I feel really proud of myself when. So that's a way that we would be talking about the marathon, not just getting your steps in and your mileage in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. Because you're finding all of those roots, all of those sort of like mental foundations that they're standing on, and enforcing them and growing them. And it is cool because, a lot of times there's that fear of the process. There's that, that decision and wanting, you and I were talking about this, is that idea of perfection. And so that as it's been said, the paralysis of analysis, and we can find ourselves just going, just locking up and fearful of making any decision because we're afraid of making the wrong decision, which of course relates to so many other things that we had growing up, and people going, oh, don't make the wrong decision, so you're constantly going, okay, what am I missing? Rather than just going in a direction and go in that direction and just kind of see what happens with that. And it's such a joy when we can fall in love with the process of something like you've done for, let's say the people who want to run marathons. You go, okay, this is part of the process. How can we have fun while we're doing it? And,
right, exactly. I don't think we have enough fun.
Right.
I don't know. And I think also during this COVID period, people have forgotten that we can still have fun. It might take a different shape and form, but we can still have fun.
Yeah, it's I think what's interesting is that during this time, it's kind of, people are now, sitting with themselves, specifically if they live alone, but sitting with themselves, right, and really going, okay, do I just want to be a consumer of media, or do I maybe want to be a producer of, creating my life I've talked to so many people who have found new hobbies during this time, where it's like, wow, that's so cool. They didn't realize that they appreciated this or that they appreciated that, or now they're finding new ways of making money or exploring new artistic avenues. And it's like, it's so much fun. It's so strange that it took something like this to kind of waken up those senses.
It's awesome to think of that. And so what are some of the things that you've found fun or interesting recently?
Well, I try to make a podcast once a day. I mean, it's not a forced thing at all, but it's usually just kind of, I use the podcast as like an audio diary or an audio journal for my future self. So he's got memories of what I did in my life. So when I got synchronicities, I put those in there. Of course, dreams I got, sometimes I'll read out of my idea book. But I'm constantly getting, I've realized I'm addicted to ideas. I'm addicted to ideas and brainstorming and imagining the possibilities of things, of unpacking the imagination. And I think when I'm not either in the midst of creating something or daydreaming about something or talking with someone about, imagination or the sort of enlightening aspects of life, I find myself kind of, those are the times I get bored, or those are the times that I'm just like, I kind of tune out. And I think what I've viewed my ideas as is like they're like little babies, and I feel it's my duty to give them life. And so I'm writing them down a lot. I got this whole idea book full of things here that, like, what I just realized was that these ideas that I have for screenplays, I've never written a screenplay, but with these ideas for screenplays, I have the whole beginning, middle, and end in my brain. And I've written all these things down, and I thought, whoa, how fun would that be if I made an album of each of these screenplay ideas? Like, so I don't have to write out an entire screenplay. I can tell the whole story within this sort of anthology album, like a Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury or something, this anthology album of these particular stories. So that kind of just blipped on.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah,
It's funny that you say, I love that you said you're addicted to brainstorming and ideas, because I am exactly the same way. I love brainstorming. I love it. I love thinking of ideas, and I feel like there's this pop. I always describe it as like a pop. It's that I have, it just feels like I'm in synchronicity with myself and another person. Oh my, I feel like I don't even have the words right now. I love ideas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And when you're in that groove, what's so cool is that I've discovered through it is that when you really actually are truly getting to that brainwave, that's one of the, so when I grew up in Chicago, I was in a few improv groups, and I learned about the art of yes and, where you don't negate anything that's there. You just grow on top of it. You just keep growing
Exactly.
on top of it. And everyone surrenders to it for the good of the idea. You're giving service to the reality. You're both the parents of giving birth to this thing that's, who knows where it's coming from, but you're on for the ride. Okay, where do you want to go next? And what's interesting is I tuned my brain into working in that way, that when I moved out to California, I ended up coming across just a lot of me, every man for himself, rather than the one for all and all for one. The idea of like playing the game of trust. You fall back, people are going to catch you.
Yeah.
And when you can fit in that groove with someone where you're the excitement is kind of more about the art of the conversation and just kind of the word jazz that's got to go on there. It could just be such an enjoyable, lofty thing, and it feels so good, because then what's interesting is you are truly both operating in the same brainwave. Then you're both, and then you find yourselves predicting what the other person was about to say, or they happen to say something that you were just about to say, and you're like, oh my God, of course you just said that. And, I love that.
Me too. I love it too.
It feels so good. It feels so good. I mean, if we could have, like, I frequently, the utopian society, and this is one of the sort of screenplays ideas. I'm not going to go real deep into it, but the idea of a utopian society where you walk around and standing there on the street corner, people are talking about these ideas. People are excited about talking about the dream that they had that morning, and the person's going, "Wow, tell me more," rather than, "Oh, wow, that's strange. Anyway, today's baseball stats." It's like, whoa, there's something to investigate there. So I just would love if I was standing in line at the grocery store and I hear the two people talking about synchronicities in front of me. The cashier with the, like, oh my gosh, that would just be, I'm just getting tingly on my arms just thinking about that.
Do you think about your dreams?
You know what's so crazy? I've been having some big dreams lately, because I've been taking this particular, it's in supplement form. It's called Harataki mushroom, and it opens up the third eye. And so I'll take one or two of those before I fall asleep. And then plus I go to sleep with a selenite crystal. And those things have been activating some great lucid dreams lately. It's interesting you're asking.
Oh, cool.
And so throughout
do you record your dreams or write them down or talk to them about them?
Oh my gosh, you're reminding me now that I got to start doing more of that, because I used to, and holy cow, my synchronicities were big time. I was writing down my dreams and writing down my synchronicities, and whoa, it was really tuning them in. Do you write down your dreams?
Yeah, I either write them down, but sometimes I can't form good sentences with my fingers, like at that moment. So I make voice memos to myself most of the time now. So I did it like last night and the night before. I had some really vivid dreams, and I spoke them to myself. Yeah.
What were your dreams about, if you don't mind talking about?
No, I don't mind. I love talking about dreams. So actually, I wanted to say something else. When I do dream work, because I do a lot of dream work with my clients, when we do dream work, I ask them to recite their dream to me as if it's happening now in the present. And then I also remind them, if they can't remember something, just make it up. Like, go with the flow and make it up, because we'll find some other avenue of your mind that's being activated. So instead of saying I'm stuck, let's just keep going, sort of like yes and with your dream.
God, that's brilliant.
So that's what I do. And so sometimes when I speak it to myself, I try to do it in present tense, but sometimes I do it in past tense because I'm still a little groggy. But my dream the other night was that I'm walking through a house, and I can't, and it's really big, and I see various people there that I know, including one of my high school, like one of my babysitters. And the reason I think I saw her is because she had contacted me on Instagram recently for a recipe that I'd made something, and she was like, "Oh, I want to make this," and so I sent her the recipe. and it triggered me having such fond memories of her. So basically, I'm walking through this house, and there's lots of different corridors, and I see her, and I'm really happy to see her, and she's so bubbly and friendly. And I'm trying to get somewhere, but it feels real. There's no but, and it feels big, so I'm having a little bit of difficulty finding my way out. Except I'm not nervous. I'm really happy, and I think there's more, but I haven't remembered. I recited it to myself, and then I haven't replayed it. But I try to do that a lot.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's really incredible.
So
you could have an entire podcast. I mean, do you have your own podcast?
No, I don't.
You could have,
but I
with all
should.
the information I've seen on your website, you could totally have a podcast now that you've got the Anchor app. And on top of that, should you decide to record your dreams, you can upload your dreams into it too. It's just such a fun
I could also
thing.
do dream work with anyone and then they call in, and then we do a dream. We talk about their dream.
Ooh, that's cool.
So
cool.
I don't believe like there's a Jungian perspective of looking at dreams where where one thing represents another thing. I don't really do that. In fact, that's not the way I was taught to do dream work when I was in graduate school. And when I've studied with various dream experts, that's not something that I particularly resonate with. So if we were talking about one of your dreams, and we can if you have one that's on tap, but if we were, I wouldn't say, well, what does that represent? We would instead talk about like what this represents in your actual life, not what does it represent in a mythological capacity. I mean, both are fine. It's just that's not the way I've been taught and the way I respond well.
Wow, that's so interesting. What are your thoughts about dream travel?
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay. Well, there are a couple aspects about this. Well, astral travel. I guess let's start with that one. What are your thoughts about astral travel, out of body?
Oh, like having an out of body experience?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that definitely does happen to people, because they're probably, well, I don't know why it happens, but I think that if somebody has it, why would I want to negate? I would never want to negate their experience. So I would want to ask them so many detailed questions so that they could go back to that moment and relive it, because it's probably unique. And so I think that anytime somebody can have a magical experience, like, let's promote that, because so much of life is heavy. Like, I'm interested in having more of our life be light and like cheerful and happy, even when we encounter difficulty. We don't have to hold everything with such a tight grip. Like our fingers on the steering wheel don't have to be white knuckled. We can have like a looser grip and still get to our destination with a much more pleasant travel time. So I feel the same way with astral travel. Like, I would never want to dismiss somebody's experience, because especially if I haven't had it. I haven't had it with you, so I would want to hear yours, and then it would maybe my mind would become more open to having something like that in my life. So that's how I feel.
That's cool, because I mean, if we were to play with the idea that all of us are just, our various perspectives of the great all that is, if we were to continue, if we were to play with that idea that we're all just reflections of one another, and of all that is trying to kind of make sense of itself here on the land, then that would make sense that what is possible for one person would be possible for another person, and we're all part of that consciousness. We're all those little subatomic particles blipping around. What are your thoughts about quantum mechanics and that aspect in terms of how it fits in with your coaching?
So again, how do I want to answer this? I would definitely say that people have all sorts of different views on everything and anything and I want to learn from them. And so I've had some clients, and we do not share similar beliefs on a lot of things. Like, some of our politics were diametrically opposed, and people would ask me, how can you work with this person? And I would think, well, just because our politics are different, he is having an experience in his life that I could learn from. And maybe his view is not like mine, but maybe there's something that I could resonate with. And he did open my mind. We don't vote similarly at all, but I still could find a lot of value in his being. And I feel the same way with like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, that like maybe I don't know enough. And so there's certain things I haven't had exposure to that I would love a client to teach me about, and vice versa. I would love for my clients to want to be open to hearing another perspective. I think that's what makes our lives richer, is like learning another perspective with an open heart and an open mind, sort of like this co-creation, like a co-creative way. And I think so I don't feel like I know that much, to be honest, about, like, I don't think that I come to my clients saying, look at it from this quantum physics or quantum mechanics way. But but if they come to me, I want to learn, and then we would probably maybe I would learn from them. I would say that if somebody wants that, I would, like, if they want to learn from me, I'm not going to be the person who's going to teach them quantum mechanics, because I don't really feel like I know enough.
It's so interesting because the stuff that you're teaching, it's great. It's all these inspired, whether it's people who channel, whether it's life coaches, whether it's shaman, et cetera, et cetera. I love finding the Venn diagrams between the areas that of their discovery, and you just saying right here that you don't know about quantum mechanics necessarily, or the full operations behind it. What's interesting is that you are naturally, what you're doing already is naturally falling in line with those principles, and it's your own perspective as to how you're feeling called, to lead in those directions.
Okay, so that's fair, funny and fair, because I've had 2 or 3 other big experiences in my life that I can recount where I've asked a teacher, somebody who I really value, I don't feel like I know enough, and they've said, you're doing it the exact thing right now, you're just not using that same word. Because, like,
yeah, brilliant.
And I've said, really? And I've said, but I didn't learn it like that. And they'll say, this is your natural way of being.
Oh my God.
And so that there have been literally 2 big experiences with different people. One with NLP. And because I've never had an NLP class, I've always thought, I want to take that. And my friend who took lots of years of NLP was like, wow, this is you naturally. You don't really need to do it. Like, you don't need the class. And so I was like really touched and moved. And then the other was when I was in this, I took a 2-year, this was an awesome class. I took this 2-year somatic training class. So we basically were looking at the way our bodies deal with everything before we have words to deal with them.
Ooh,
and
wow.
So we were talking, like, my teacher was talking about affect and like how sometimes we're naturally like really engaged and like big in our emotions, and then other times we have a proclivity, we have a proclivity and we're more small or introverted or quiet or flat. And I was listening and I raised my hand and I said, I'm so worried that I'm very flat all the time. And I started crying while I raised my hand, and I said, and I don't want to look like I'm unemotional. And she said, look at you right now. You're not emotional. Class, can you all see that Nina is not emotional? And they were laughing. And she said, you're like the least emotional person in this class. And she said, you asking the question even indicates that that's not you. And I don't want you to worry. And so those were 2 big examples that weren't big for other people, but very important to me.
Oh my God.
I realized that, like, I don't have to learn this behavior or this way of being. This is just naturally me.
Yeah. And then what's funny is when you do end up, see what's so exciting in the epiphanies. I just love the epiphanies, because to me that's always like high fives going. It's the high, cosmos and the person that's dealing with, and they're going, here's the answer to that question you had long ago that you didn't really even realize was a question in the first place. Mm-hmm. Yet here's the answer. And you're going, what? Oh my God. Right. I always secretly wondered about that since I was 13 or whatever. And now you're telling me it this way here. It's just like, it's so crazy. What's interesting is when you do end up finding yourself looking into those areas, let's say the NLP or any of these other things, let's say Alan Watts, you're listening.
Yeah, I love Alan Watts.
He ends up stumbling across some philosophy or some almost word for word thing that you just had said, that you have known about for years and years. Maybe you wrote down in a diary, or you just said the other day. And now here is this guy with this ancient wisdom coming through the speakers. His spirit is still right there. And he's saying the same epiphany that you had. And you go, oh my God, we're operating in the same brainwaves here. Like, how
Yep.
exciting is that? You know,
Oh, it's so cool. I agree
It's
with
so-
you.
it's so fun when that happens. And then like with the NLP stuff too. Once you go look in there deeper and deeper, and you go, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Just like you were saying, you'll be like, oh, holy cow, this is the stuff that I've been teaching. I've been telling people all about, and now here are just simply the sort of mechanics behind how it's working. You know?
Yes,
And you're like,
exactly.
oh, okay, that's interesting. And so it's always fun when you see science sort of catch up to what intuitives already know about, and have known
Yeah.
about.
hmm
It's always
yeah, that's a
interesting.
great point.
Yeah, because then you're
Yesterday-
like, holy cow. It's just it feels so good. It feels so good.
It feels so good, and it feels so connecting. I like that feeling. I love that feeling.
Mm-hmm. What were you gonna say the other day? What happened?
So I love talking to people, and I think you do too. Like, I love it, and and that's actually been something that's been a little challenging. I like talking to strangers and talking to new people. And that's actually been a little bit challenging for me during COVID, because I like to meet people in person and talk to a lot of people. And I like networking, and I don't mean necessarily networking for business, although maybe, but I like to just have ideas and just see where that goes. And so yesterday a client asked me, you seem like you're really good at this. How do you do it? And I said, I don't know. And so it made me slow down, and we had a long conversation about how he operates and how I operate. And it was just so fun to have that flow again with another person describing how we each do it. And it was so cool. It was just so cool. It was exactly what I'd been missing, because he was wondering how he can get better he's in a sales position, and he was wondering how he can get better or more connected to people and convert people to friends rather than just business associates. And so we were just talking about like how to do that and how to do it naturally with very small ways. Like when you talk to somebody, ask them about something that you are genuinely interested in that they mentioned already. Like, don't ask them, how was COVID? Instead, ask them like, how did it turn out when you did this? And I really liked when we had this conversation about such and such. And so, because it shows that you've actually been paying attention. So we were having this nice conversation, this really connected conversation rather, about how to connect. It was so cool.
It's great too, because then there's that familiarity of like, oh, my fellow star child, who knows
Right.
what sort of agreements we've made in the bodiless, shapeless, world before we became these avatars here. It's like, how many other lifetimes have we known each other? It's great when you have that connection with people, and you go, aha, this is interesting. This makes so much sense. It's so crazy because at every Yachtly cruise show, it's so interesting because I'm constantly coming. Somehow people just know, and they tend to come up to me and tell me, and all of a sudden we get into a conversation. Next thing I know, they're talking about some amazing synchronicity that happened to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we met each other at this thing, and last time we saw you guys." So they'll tell me some really amazing synchronistic story, and it's so funny because it's like somehow it's like the universe just led them over to me, knowing that I would be the most. I would get a huge kick out of it and just go, tell me more. And so it's cool because Yachtly Cruise become like this beacon for finding just good, enlightened people and finding those connections with them and hearing them echo to me theories that I've had. And yet here they're saying these things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, of course, of course. Out of all the nights, you decided to come by tonight to see this show, And I mean, it's like, oh man, it's just so exciting, and that's why, like, when after when I saw you at the pool, after in the morning time, and we started talking, I was like, holy cow, there's just such a familiarity.
Yeah. Well, actually, you don't know this because you are like a celebrity and I'm like the patron. But the first time I saw you, it was at the Viper Room, and I had driven up. I was living in two places. I was living in San Diego, well, in Encinitas, and in LA. And so because I had a job in San Diego, and I was living in Encinitas, and I had an apartment in LA because I wasn't ready to give it up yet. And so one of my best friends, Stephanie, invited me to the Yachtly Cruise Show. And this was like in January. You guys had your residency at the Viper, not the Viper. Yeah, was it the Viper Room?
Oh yeah.
okay, so you had your residency, and I like got there in the nick of time, and they had waited in line, and I got in like literally like 3 minutes before you went on stage, and then we were in the front row, and then after the show we were just smiling and so cheerful, and she and I talked to you, and I was like, and we were like, yes, so we talked to you, and we were like, he's so awesome. And then I also talked to Baba Booey, and we were talking about Howard Stern, but I remember specifically talking to you and feeling so uplifted and great. And then I went again in San Diego at the Music Box, which is where I had a first date, which was awesome.
Oh,
and
yes.
we went out for pizza and came back and actually asked to use the bathroom of the Music Box, and we talked to you again. You don't remember that either.
Yeah,
but
that's right. Yes.
So I remember. So I've now talked to you like a bunch because you're the person I always feel like I connect best with.
It's so fun because especially since I'm up there back behind the keyboards, it's usually so dark back there. It's so funny that anyone even sees, what's going on back there. So I throw as many Easter eggs as possible into what I'm doing just to see if anyone's paying attention. And so I always get a kick out of that when people are like, oh, I saw that thing you did. Did you make the nanu sign more convincing?
Right.
I'm like, you bet I did. How the heck you saw that? And it's like, it's so much fun when I hear these little giblets of information, and I get such a kick out of hearing how people came across us or how they hear about us. Or one of the things I wanted to ask you was, so what got you into life coaching? What were some of the inspirations, the seeds that grew in your brain in that direction?
Oh, that's a good question. So so after college I worked in PR and I worked for a fashion company, and I started therapy, like being a patient in therapy, because I'd had a breakup, and I was having a real hard time. And up until that point when I started therapy, I didn't think that therapy was necessary for people. I literally thought it seemed silly for people, not just for me, but for people, until I realized I needed to talk to a therapist. And then I was like, oh, this is good for me and for people. I had I had a small view.
And for people. Both me and for people.
Yes.
It's great. Yeah.
And so among the things that my therapist and I talked about were, what do I want to do with my life, or just for the next little while. So she suggested, well, we started talking about like, what are the things I like doing, blah, blah, blah. And she said, I think you'd be a great therapist. Like, you're really good at listening, and also you're really good at brainstorming, and I think this would be something you might be good at. And hearing my therapist say this, somebody I loved and respected so much, felt like I was being tapped by like an angel. And so I enrolled in a program in LA. I lived in LA for many, many years. And I enrolled in a program and I became a therapist. And I liked it okay until like 5, 6, 7 years down the road. And I thought, we are circling the drain. We're talking about the same things. And my supervisor at the time kept telling me I was doing a lot of coaching and not enough therapy, and I needed to like examine. And so I was examining, and I thought, I don't really like being a therapist, and I don't feel like my clients liked me and I liked them, but I felt like we weren't moving forward. I felt like we were looking a lot at historical things, which is fine, but we weren't making, in my mind, enough progress for them. And I felt like we were exactly the same as when they started 5 or 6, 7 years ago. And I thought, this is not okay. And so I started seeing the coach, and I started thinking, I think I want to change my practice. So I changed my practice over like the course of about a few months. I was going to say a year. It wasn't even that long. And for the last about 6 or 7 years, I've been coaching. And I'm a certified coach now, and I work with individuals, teenagers, so adult individuals, teenagers. I have corporate clients, and I work with couples who, and I think one thing that's different about couples coaching versus couples therapy is in couples coaching, we do a lot of like practical things, whereas in couples therapy, you're looking at historical ways that you and your partner have met, and your problems have evolved over time. Whereas in coaching, let's look at the problem and let's get you an answer and a solution immediately, so that your fight doesn't last like the next 6 months or even 3 days.
I love it.
That's
brilliant.
Yeah. I don't like when I don't really, I myself don't really like conflict, and so I like to help my clients get out of conflict as quickly as possible.
That is so awesome. My sister is now taking, Jenny is taking online classes to be a life coach, and
cool.
she's been taking some online classes. So this is really cool to hear how, hear how you went through it, and now you're successfully doing it. So this is good. I'm going to tell her about this. And
You're welcome to have her contact me.
Oh, good. Yes, good. Oh, that'd be so great. That'd be so great. She could definitely use any help that she can get. And
I have a lot of knowledge and information, and I'm sure we can brainstorm on something together if you would like that.
It's so interesting that you're talking about the idea of therapy, how therapy works rather than how therapy works and then how life coaching works. And like how therapy, you're right. It's so interesting how it's usually about, okay, here's what's going on in the past. Let me just dig this up again. And then you help me kind of work through this thing and blah, 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 blah. And whereas like a life coach is like going, okay, how do we move into the future, in ways that are satisfying, in ways that do enlighten you and relax you and get you, excited about living life and moving forward and following your passions, all those great things. And it's so this is an interesting thing that is always kind of like been sort of a baffling thing, is that sometimes I realize that sometimes people just want to get stuff off their chest. They just want to like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then, but without a solution, without a way of like, it's like they just want to get it off their chest. But then there are those people who tell you this thing and they do want to find some way out of it. But then those who tend to get the stuff off their chest tend to go back to that same information to just get off their stuff off their chest. And then when you go, well, this sounds like it's something that's painful to you, and this isn't really benefiting you in your life. Here are some solutions, but then they don't want to hear the solutions. So what are some of the interesting ways that you kind of help? How do you distinguish between when it's time to cut someone off from just bringing up blah, 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 the same thing versus like, okay, here, now's the time to move forward with that.
Okay, so there's that speaks to a few things. Number one is I might interject and say, I'm hearing you, it sounds like you're ranting and raving, and is this a time when you need to just say it all, or are you wanting something constructive to do next?
Ooh,
and
that's good.
And they would say, I kind of just want to say it all. Okay, so let's have it. Here's your time. You're going to say it all. And because I don't want to start interjecting and interrupting, but they needed to tell the whole story. Sometimes people really need to tell the whole story. Now, then it becomes hard if the same story needs to be told 6 times, but that's okay. What are you learning differently from the telling of the story? We've heard this a few times. What's different each time? So that's something. The other thing is, let's say they say, you're right, I am ranting. I think I'm ready to move forward. Okay, so what are you wanting? Well, I don't even know. Okay, so are you wanting? So let's look at this different ways. So it looks like you're set in like a mindset that this bad thing happened to you. What if we look at it with a new mindset, and let's look at it from a perspective of a balloon floating through the sky. So it's light and bright. And so let's bring some helium to the story so that there's lightness.
I love it.
So that there's some lightness to it. Okay. So if we were looking at this from a balloon's perspective, then what would we notice? Well, I would notice that I'm really stuck. I'm heavy, and like I need more balloons to pull me up. Okay, great. So thinking of more balloons, what do you need? Well, I think I need to shake it out. Okay, so let's stand up and together let's shake it out. How does that look? And so then they might demonstrate, and I would do it with them, or I might say, okay, now like just like the song by Taylor Swift, Shake It Like, or whoever, or I don't know, whatever, like these Shake It Out songs. Let's just do that. Let's shake. So we're gonna shake. We're gonna squirm. We're gonna like get some energy out, because this thing you're talking about has become an albatross that's heavy. So let's lighten it. Let's become doves, not albatrosses. And so I like to use a lot of analogies, and like let's talk about this from a different perspective and find out what you're needing, because it feels like you're a little stuck here in the story. And so I want to help you. I want to help pull you out of this so that you can see yourself differently.
Wow, that's good, because then you're taking them outside of this seemingly limited situation where it looks like there's no way out, and you're going, I like that. That's cool that you're showing them new perspectives. That, so that's really cool. Now, once they start doing that, do you find them kind of their old story kind of like loosening its grip on them through?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes also, not sometimes, most of the time when we have movement associated with our words, we're creating a new pattern in our minds, and it's easier to make a new habit, a new goal. And also the other thing is, when people always say that they want accountability. So then they say, I want you to be accountable to me. And I'll say, no, this isn't my goal. This is your goal. You're accountable to yourself. I'll be here to support you, but I'm not going to check in with you and like charge you more money or make you do push-ups. So let's give you something that you can actually do. Your homework is something that you can actually do, rather than something that I've given you saying you must do this. You don't have to do it. I want you to do something that you're investing in yourself. I want you to get the most out of me, not me giving, like, I don't want to take your money just so that I become wealthier. I want you to gain something from your investment. You're your biggest investment.
Wow, that's a great way of switching that perspective, so that way they really see what's going on here, that they're not just kind of being led around, told what to do, what not to do, like a classroom or something. Now it's like, okay, you're in the driver's seat, you're participating.
I'm not your like consultant or advisor. We're creating something together.
Wow.
And a lot of coaching is practical. Like some stuff is like, I'm really concerned about buying a new car. How do I buy a new car? And so we're talking about like, what are the barriers to buying a new car in your mind? Not only just like with regard to getting your credit score, but like, do you feel like you're not worthy of getting a new car? Well, you are. Why wouldn't you be? And so we would talk about all of these things, and then maybe the homework is small. Instead of buying a car this week, how about you go walk into a dealership and just browse? How about next week you walk back into a different dealership and you ask to test drive a car? How about you sit down and ask, how much does it cost to buy such car? So let's break this down into steps that are more manageable, rather than you feeling like you can't get this thing, because you can. Everybody can get what they want. I believe we can get everything we want.
Right. Which is great, because that falls in line with the. Now, which is interesting, because that's what this law of attraction situations are all about, manifesting your reality.
Right, I believe we can do that.
So it's cool, because the way in which you're teaching these people that stuff is in a language that they can easily understand, which is just great. And you're power packing the nutrition right in there, which is awesome. And it's been said that when people, I took a psychology class back in long ago, and the teacher was talking about a couple of different ways of how psychologists will work with people. One is, here's some advice and this is what you need to do. And then there's one where they're just going, they're just asking questions all the time and getting that person to answer their own questions. And it's interesting, because as you are talking to these people in a language they can understand, there's already like a rapport there that they've got formed with that kind of language. So when you're putting that nutrition in there, it's great, because they must feel so empowered.
That's my hope. My hope is for everybody to feel empowered in their own lives, not for them to feel disempowered. It's to feel like you're your master of your domain. You're the master of what you have and what you want. There are always times when we feel like we've been marginalized, and I want to talk about that too, for sure. And let's move forward so that doesn't feel like the familiar and the default feeling. Right.
Because then those can become the perspectives. Those become the glasses that you're looking at everything through. And of course, inevitably are going to filter through those nuggets of information, because those are the glasses that you're looking at. It's kind of like the they live glasses. He puts on the they live glasses, and it's like consume, obey. It's like he sees what's behind it. And I think that's quite interesting for you to be able to go, okay, let's take those glasses off here. Let's put these glasses on with this kind of perspective. And now let's see how you see things.
Right.
And all of a sudden, all this vibrance, starts becoming clearer and clearer. Wow, that's cool. So now, I just feel like maybe it's time for you to give a TED Talk. Have you already done that?
No, I haven't. I've considered it. I haven't done it yet.
What's needed to do a TED Talk anyway? I mean, did you just have to record yourself talking and you send it to someone?
No, you have to actually get involved with the TEDx or the TED organization, and you have to be. I think you have to sort of like know somebody or request to be examined, to be looked at and apply, and then you spend months refining your talk. Maybe not months, but yeah, probably a couple months. Not like 6 months, but maybe a couple months.
And so it's refined what, in front of people who are watching you?
Oh, no. You refine it. You might refine it, like you might record it, and you might refine it for like your mentor, your TEDx mentor. I know somebody who gave one, and this is how it worked for him.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Because they want you to do well, and you want to do well.
Right. Well, you've got so much power-packed information.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And geez, they only give you 15 minutes. So you, no matter what 15 minutes you'd put in there, it's going to be very enlightening. I think the crazy thing would be to try to figure out of all of that inventory that you've got there, what are going to be the keynote things, that can.
Yeah, totally. That is so generous of you to say thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Your website is just filled with, it's like those carnival fun houses. It's like you go.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending story, right?
Yeah, you got all these different, like you go through all these different. There's just a lot here, and ways in which you have services for people, which is fantastic. And I think
thank you.
Particularly now during the pandemic, I can imagine that you probably are having more clients now than before.
I have been. Yes.
Because we've all heard about the various psychological effects that it's been having on people, and either they need someone to talk to, or they're stuck in a rut, or what have you. And it's just exciting to see the amount of innovation that's growing from this, and I just love it. It's really quite interesting. It's really like there are still places out there available that we can travel to. More places are opening now. It's getting people out there, and I'm noticing a lot of bike stores are selling out of their bikes, which is so cool.
Oh, I know, that's awesome. I know.
It's like, wow, man, this is great. There are these unintended, unexpected benefits that have been happening through this. The drive-ins, I'm so excited for the drive-ins. The fact
I know, that's so cool.
Oh my gosh, they've just been
sitting. Actually, there's something else I was thinking about just yesterday, and that is, so during COVID, a lot of stores and grocery stores had started having limited hours, and I don't think that's so bad. Of course, I like going to the grocery store at 2 a.m. because that's the best time to shop. No, I'm kidding, but like, I think that having limited things, like limited hours, isn't such a bad thing, because it makes us more thoughtful when we actually need to go. And do we really need everything at our fingertips, or can we make do? Can we be creative or wait? Either plan ahead or wait another 12 hours or 8 hours. I think that's something nice, and I think also it reminds me of like when I'm in LA or a city during like a holiday, like Christmas or Thanksgiving, and things are like quieter, and it gives us time to think. And I'm definitely like an outgoing and extroverted person, and I still think that having some time when everything's not as like bustling is really good for the creative mind.
Yes.
And so having like limited, like having some reduction in like store hours, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think at the beginning of COVID, it just felt like everything was closed, and everything was closed. But now that things are reopening, I think it's going to be we're going to have hopefully a more mindful society, and I have a lot of hope for us.
Yeah, I feel that same way. I know what you mean. It's interesting, like, to not have whatever you need right there at your fingertips whenever you can. What's interesting is that this forms like a subliminal signal of gratitude, I would say. Grateful for the time that you are able to get to the store to get the thing before
Right.
close at 6. There's more of an appreciation and a gratefulness, and like you're saying, making do with what you got. This has really taught people, especially in the beginning when everyone's running around for toilet paper, it taught people to go, okay, this is a good time to learn about what rationing means. This is a good time to figure out, do I need to have 5 meals today? Can I maybe have 1 meal today, or
Right,
can I even
exactly.
try fasting another day like the monks do, or what have you? Let's try that experiment. And it was interesting because I've noticed I've had conversations with people where they've become better cooks during this time,
Yeah.
because they've been cooking more at home, and they're like, holy cow, I never realized I was such a good cook. And it's like, wow, that is cool. How does that old phrase go? Out of necessity breeds invention. I think that's
Yes, exactly.
Like
Yeah. I totally agree with that, and I think that's been the case for most people now. Also, same with fun. Like, we have had a necessity to make our own fun, or at least I have. And I grew up in a very, very small community in northern New Mexico where we didn't have like a mall. There was like one movie theater that played one movie some nights, not every night, and so I didn't have the life of like in LA. Like, I didn't have my LA or San Diego life that I have had for the last many years. But so this period has just made me recall how I operated and how I had fun as a kid. And I remembered, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to do this. I know how to make do and make fun. That's been really a blessing. Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. So growing up in an area where the movies aren't always there, where you don't have all these shopping areas and all these places to go to, you really had to had to make do with what you had. That's so interesting.
Exactly. And my parents didn't want my brother and me to have like video game consoles. So we were forced to play outside or do art or read or like play with friends. And so or like have like make sports, or I played a lot of dress ups. Like, I think that's why I like fashion now, but I did a lot of that as a kid. And so during this period, I've like made a point to wear all of my dresses, even fancy dresses where I'm not really going anywhere. I'll just wear them at my apartment when I'm like eating dinner. Or I've gotten closer to some of my friends that I don't necessarily get to see regularly, but we've had more like phone calls, and that's been really lovely. And I think, and so I've really stepped into this role of like making more fun for myself and people with the people could reach me if they're interested in talking or learning about coaching or just reading my blog or just saying hi on Instagram, After Defeat, just AFTERDEFEAT, and the same for my website, www.afterdefeat.com. And there people can contact me and read my blog, etc. So I would love to hear from people. I'm friendly and open, and I love to hear new ideas. So that's always really awesome to me.
Gosh, thank you so much for being a guest on the show and for such a high vibrating conversation. This is going to be so great to share with everybody.
This has been so fun for me. I just want to thank you for having me on and having such a thorough, fun, light, interesting and introspective conversation. I really like the way you operate and the way you are in the world. I love hearing how positive you are, and also how tickled you are with ideas. It's just such a present part of you.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just feel like it's all giggles, and I like that. That's the kind of way that those are the people I like, are the people who are like open to giggling and then actually do it. That's me.
Oh my gosh. This is good. We'll be waking up some more of those people in their hibernation through this podcast. That'll be fun. Well, thank you so much, Nina, and you have a great day, and
you too.
Stay inspired.
Sounds good, and you also. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, it's Mickey Dolans here. You're listening to Inspirado Projecto.